Now, I've been using ChatGPT pretty much since its inception, but lately I've been having some issues with ChatGPT and not really getting the results that I wanted. So I went ahead and switched to another LLM, and this LLM is working a lot better for my specific use cases. And I'm pretty sure it's also going to work a lot better for your specific use cases. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you what that LLM is, as well as introducing you to some of the amazing features that exist with this LLM that you do not get with ChatGPT. And then a little bit later in the video, I'm going to be showing you a full proof of concept app that I built using Flutterflow that uses this LLM as its backend. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I discuss on this channel can be viewed and or cloned when you join our amazing Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our incredible Patreon community, then you can learn more and hopefully become a member via the first link in the description below the video. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I've been using ChatGPT pretty much since its inception for all kinds of tasks having to do with programming and not having to do with programming. And really, it has been working fairly well for me to solve all kinds of problems, from anything very, very simple to very, very complex, until fairly recently when I began to feel a little underwhelmed because I wasn't really getting the results that I was looking for. And so this really began with ChatGPT 4.0. And the main issue with ChatGPT 4.0, among some of the other issues, is that it's fairly wordy, right? So if you give it a question, it's going to dump a whole answer on you. And even if you tell it, hey, just modify something very small and give me a little code snippet, it's still going to give you the entire thing. And you really, really need to tell it in very, very specific terms that you want just a small code snippet. Otherwise, it's just going to keep dumping the whole piece of code on you, the whole widget or a whole function that you're writing. And so eventually you're going to be getting the results that you want. And I've seen a lot of people complain about this. I've seen a lot of people talk about this. And really, this is the first time when I became somewhat underwhelmed while using ChatGPT to solve all kinds of programming issues. And so I started to read different forums, different communities, and I eventually stumbled on Anthropic. And this was right about the time that Claude 3.5 Sonnet was released. And so this is the blog article right here that talks about this new model. And as you can see in this comparison table, they actually claim that this new model is better than GPT 4.0 here, or 4.0 right here, in all kinds of metrics, right? So in this metric, this metric, this metric, this metric, this metrics, and this metric as well, right? So just from looking at this comparison table, I began to think that this model might be worth a try because it looks really, really promising. And I started to research a little bit more about this model, and I noticed a lot of people are enjoying using this model when it comes to programming tasks, right? They claim that this is a really, really good model when it comes to writing code, generating snippets, even building all kinds of different apps. And so I decided to give this model a try. And after trying it out for the last couple of weeks, since this new version was released, I'm happy to say that at this point in time, I have no reason to go back to ChatGPT. And so right now, what I want to do is I want to show you some of the things that you can do with this model. And then a little bit later in the video, I want to show you a proof of concept app that I built with Flutterflow, which is my favorite no-code app builder that uses this model in the backend to give you an easy-to-use chat interface. Now, to get started with this model, what you want to do is you want to Google for Claude 3.5. And when you Google, you're either going to locate the main page or you're going to end up on this blog article. And from here, you can simply click this button, and that's going to redirect you to the chat interface. Now, just like with ChatGPT, there are two ways of using this model. You have this front-end chat interface that you can have a conversation, you can ask it all kinds of questions, have it solve all kinds of issues for you. or you can interface via a backend, right? This is where you get your API keys. This is where you have more of a programmatic, more of a technical interaction with this model. And so first, I want to show you the front end experience that you can have with this model, because there's some really, really nice features that you get here that you do not get with ChatGPT. And so now, as you can see here, I actually have a conversation with this model where I tell it to create an 8-bit style craft for me in SVG. And this is the response that it gave me. And so it went ahead and told me what exactly it's doing, what kind of, like crab it created for me. But most importantly, it created something called an artifact, right? So if you click here, you're going to have another window open up here, and you can actually see this crab right here that was created, right? So this is the preview pane here, but if you click on the code, you can see the actual code here that was used to create it, right? So unlike with other models that simply write the code for you, here you can actually see what it looks like when this code is executed, okay? Now later I told it to create an animation of multiple of these red crabs, okay? So it went ahead and says, certainly I'll create an animation featuring multiple red crabs, etc., etc. And it also created an other artifact for me that I can click on, and I can actually see the animation right here. And obviously I can click on code here and I can see all the code that was used to create this animation. This is actually code that you can place on a web page that uses SVG and JavaScript for this animation, right? So if I come over here, I can see the preview of this. Right now I can continue chatting with it. I can, tell it to do something else, maybe to add some of other features in here. But you got to admit, this is actually fairly powerful, because we're not only getting the code that you typically see right here being generated, you're actually seeing the code executed, right? And so I find this fairly amazing, right? This is actually pretty powerful, right? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other chats that I had, right? So next, I asked it to create an animation of a clock using JavaScript, okay? So it went ahead, it told me a little bit about what it's doing, it gave me an outline, but just like with the previous examples, it went ahead and actually executed this code for me in this artifact here, right? So if I click over here, I can see this artifact, and it's actually executing the code of a clock animation with JavaScript, right? So if I click on code, there's my, HTML right here, there's my page, and there's, between these script tags, there's my actual animation. This is the actual JavaScript right here, right? So check this out. This is the preview here. Now, obviously, I can go ahead and I can tell it something, maybe change the hands of the clock to be a different color. So we can do something like, can you change the hands of the clock to be blue? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and execute this and see what it comes up with. All right, so this is what it came up with. It says, certainly I'll modify the clock design to change the hands to blue. I'll update the existing artifact with this change, right? So it not only generated the new code, but it actually updated the artifact, which is that piece of code that you see running right here. So if I click this, this is what we're seeing, right? I can click on code, and this is my new code here. And obviously now the clocks are blue. And as you can see, it even tells us as a comment where it changed it to blue, right? So later on, you can take this code and you can simply change this color here, right? This hex color code to another color, right? If you want the hands to be of a different color, right? How cool is that, right? And this is our new artifact here, right? And obviously I can continue a conversation. I can tell it some of the other changes, maybe make the clock bigger, maybe add some, the hours to the dial, to the clock dial, stuff like that. Many things that I can do. And last but not least, I attempted to have it create a flutter animation. Okay, so I said, generate a clock animation using Flutter, right? So it, started out with in the same tone, certainly I'd be happy to create a clock animation using Flutter. This is a great opportunity, etc., etc. And when you're using Flutter, remember with Flutter, you can have your app run on all kinds of devices, right? And among those devices, you can have it run on the web as a JavaScript app, right? So if you click here, you can see the code, right? You can actually see the Flutter code, right? But unfortunately, you cannot execute it, right? And I'm not sure if this is because it doesn't support, Flutter as an artifact, right? It has created an artifact, but we cannot. There's no way to preview this. Okay, so I don't know if this is a limitation of this model right now. Maybe it only works with JavaScript and other types of animations, but it doesn't work with Flutter yet. No problem, because this is something that might work in the future, but still, we were able to create fairly cool animations here with JavaScript, as well as these crabs here. This crab animation is actually fairly cool, and you can sell it, you can change it around, and as you can see, it works immediately, right? And so using Claude AI here on the front end, you have access to all kinds of cool features, such as these artifacts that enable you to see what your code does in real time, right? After you tell it what to do, you immediately see. So you don't need to copy that code. You don't need to, run it on your own machine or in the cloud or anything like that. You can see the output, the results immediately, right? And so this is a really, really cool feature, coupled with the fact that it's really good with generating code. And you have a very powerful tool that you can use for writing all kinds of code, right? Anything from simple widgets to simple pieces of code, simple code snippets, to full-blown apps as well. All right, so now that we've taken a look at the front end, okay, let's go ahead and jump on the back end, right? And this is where you're interfacing either via APIs, or you have kind of a more technical interface. And so if you jump over to console.anthropic.com, you're going to be on the screen that looks something like this. Now, this screen has 3 tabs, right? So typically, you're going to start off in this dashboard tab, okay? And here you have a couple of options. You can start prompting with Claude, generate a prompt, invite collaborators, get API keys. And this is what you need to do if you want to use this model in your apps. You also have a prompt library, and you can explore documentation, okay? Next, if you jump over to Workbench, you can start experimenting with different prompts. And one of the biggest use cases for me when it comes to this model is generating all kinds of custom stuff for my Flutterflow apps, okay? So if we click here, you're going to be seeing my 3 prompts, and I have here a prompt that generates a custom function. I have a prompt that generates a custom action. And I have a prompt that generates a custom widget. Okay, so if we select this right here, we have here a prompt template that basically says use the template below to write a custom widget. And here we have a variable, right? This is where you can input what kind of custom widget that you want to see generated, right? And this is a variable, right? So this can be inputted on the fly. You can do multiple of these. You can generate multiple of these widgets simply by changing this variable. And this is another feature that other LLMs just do not have. Now, you may be looking at this template here and wondering, where exactly did I get it? Well, it's actually very simple. If you jump back to Flutterflow and you go into custom code, and let's say you click on add widget here, and then you click here, you're going to be seeing this boilerplate widget code, right? So at this point, you can simply copy it and cancel and come back here, and you can simply paste it here. And this is exactly what I did, because we want the model to use this boilerplate, right? We're not creating just any Flutter snippet or Flutter widget. We need to make sure we're using this boilerplate, okay? Now, once I've created this user prompt here with this variable, I can do lots of interesting things. One of the first things that I can do is I can set the variable, right? So remember, I have this variable here. And let's say we want to create a custom widget that lists, you know, random things, essentially creates a list of random things. So I can say something like, use the template below to write a custom widget that creates a list of random food items. Okay, so all I need to do is tell it exactly what kind of custom widget that I want to see created. And then I can simply click on run, and it's going to go ahead and create me a custom widget that I can use right away, right? So I went ahead and created it. It told me a little bit about it, right? But what I can do here is I can copy this, jump back into Flutterflow, right? And I can just simply paste it here. Now this custom widget is called custom widget, so I want to make sure that I call it custom widget here. And 9 out of 10 times, this widget is ready to go. I can simply say widget, and it saves without any issues. Now here I can simply compile it, wait for it to compile, and I can start using this custom widget right away. And so once our widget compiles, as you can see here, we can simply click here and we can preview our widgets, right? We can expand the width. Let's say the width is 300, and we can say the height is 400. And this is the widget preview here. And we also have an option to generate a new list that will work once we have that widget on the page, right? So if you come back over here, and let's say we create a new page here, and I'm going to say create blank, and let's say I want to create a page called page 2. And here what I can do is I can insert this widget here, right here, set up its widget properties. Let's say the width is full width, and let's say the height is 400. This is kind of what we have. And let's say, just for the purpose of this tutorial, I want to actually display this widget first. I'm going to go to app details, and I want to make sure that it starts with page 2, and I'm going to go ahead and run this app. And so when the app runs, we get a list of different food items, but we can easily generate a new list by clicking here. So now we have a new list, now we have another list, now we have another list. Now, obviously, we can continue, right? We can add all of this to the conversation, and we can give it more instructions, right? So for instance, let's say we want to have the ability of a, some kind of a function that's going to get fired whenever a user clicks on one of the items, right? So I want to make sure that there's a function that gets fired up and then has the name of the item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add an ability for a function to be executed when a user clicks on a list item, and pass the name of the item as a function argument. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to go ahead and execute this. Certainly. And this is what we get. So now we have this function right here, okay, that gets called, and it accepts a string as an argument. So if we scroll down, it tells us a couple of other things. And so this is very, very useful. But I see this right away, right? As somebody who's been doing this for a long time, I see that this is a new argument here. So what I can do now is I can copy this, and I can jump back into Flutterflow, and I can modify it. But there's a small change that I need to do, right? So I can simply paste it here. But now what I need to do is I need to add this parameter, right? So it's called onItemTab. I need to add it here. This is going to be an action. It's not nullable. And I also need to add an action parameter, right? Because remember, we're passing in a string. And so I'm going to say the name is item name, and this is going to be a string. It's not nullable. None of this is nullable. And then I need to make a quick change, right? So I need to come over here, have this called item name, and I need to enter it here. And then I also need to put future. Okay, and that's it. Now I can save it. It saves. It does not complain, because this is exactly what it expects. And now what we can do is we can compile it. And now we have access to the item that was clicked by the users, as you're going to see in just a second. All right, so we finished compiling. There's no errors, just like we expected. And so now if I come back here, I have this widget here, but I have this action, right? So I can come over here and I can say, well, I want to show a snack bar, and I want the snack bar to simply display the name of the item that was clicked, item name. And that's it. And so now when we click on any of these items, we should hopefully see a snack bar thanks to this, right? So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to reload this. All right, so here's our app here. Now, as you can see, it's selectable and should be clickable. So let's say I click on ice cream. We see ice cream. I click on curry. We're going to be seeing curry in just a second right here. And if I click on steak, we see steak. Okay, so we basically added new functionality in a couple of seconds that was fairly complex to do previously. Now you can keep going. You can add this conversation to our chat, give it more instructions. Let's say you want to add some new features, you want to add some new colors, or maybe you want those colors to be set as external variables, or you want this or you want that. You can just continue and it will generate code that works usually on the first try. In my experience, most of the time, like 9 out of 10 times, this code was working on the first try. Okay, so this is a really, really solid use case for your Flutterflow no-code apps, okay? And so this is just one of my prompts, right? I have these other prompts. So if we click on this prompt here, we have this prompt here that creates custom functions, right? Using the following template, generate a function that, and we can come over here and we can say a function that adds together two integer arguments. Okay, so we can do something like this. We can run it and it goes ahead and generates a custom function with two arguments, right? So it returns an integer. There are two integers and it simply returns a plus b. Okay, so you can simply copy this, define your return parameter as an integer, define two parameters as two integers, and then you're ready to go. And same thing for our custom action generator. Same thing exactly as was the case with the previous functions. And so I'm going to be making all of these prompts available for our amazing Patreon subscribers. So if you're a member, I will make all of these prompts available so you can get started very, very quickly and start experimenting with your Flutterflow apps by creating some custom code, custom actions, functions, or widgets as well. Okay, so this is extremely, extremely powerful. Now, another thing that you can do is if you jump over to evaluate, here you can have this model evaluate or run on different prompts by creating different variables, right? So as you can see, if I keep adding multiple rows, I can create multiple custom widgets just by setting a new variable, right? So this is another powerful feature that you typically need to use another third-party tool for when you are using other LLM models. Here, it's all built in. It's all here for you, okay? Now, if you jump over back to dashboard, you have your get API key. So if you click here, you can get an API key. So I have my API key here that you can use on third-party apps. And here is where I want to show you a proof of concept app that I built with Flutterflow that uses this model as its backend. And so if you jump over here and we jump back to this app right here, and let's say we delete this page because that was just something that we were using for demonstrational purposes only, we are going to be looking at the home page and we have a fully functioning chat client that uses this model as its LLM model in the backend. And so let's go ahead and run this app here so that you can see how this client works. And hopefully you can use it in your own applications as well. And so when we run the app, this is the screen that we see where we can chat with this model. And so we can ask it something like, what's the capital of France? And hopefully it will know, hit send, wait a couple of moments. And this is what we get. The capital of France is Paris. We can say something like, what's the population? And because we are sending all the context, it will know that we are talking about Paris, hopefully, okay? So we send this, and this is what we get back. As of 2023, the population of Paris, etc., etc. Now we can ask it something like this. How many countries does France? Let's see if it knows that. And this is the response we get. France borders 8 countries, okay? And you can obviously continue chatting with it because we have that whole context there. You don't need to keep mentioning things that you've talked about before, or you can start a new conversation if you want. But this is a client that you can use in your apps. It's actually fairly simple. We're just using the standard API here. We have the key, we have all of these other headers that you can get by jumping over Anthropic's API reference docs, right? So if you go over to docs.anthropic.com and you look at the APIs here, you can create a message. And this is exactly what I'm doing here. I'm simply using this and adapting it for Flutterflow and setting it up here. This right here is a test message. So if you execute this, this is what you're going to be seeing this right here. So you know it works. We're using this model right here. And then, you know, this app is built fairly simple. We have a list view that displays different rows of messaging depending on, you know, what kind of message. Is it our message? Is it the model's message? Now, a couple of things that I want to bring your attention to is that I went through great pains to make sure that it's displaying correctly, right? So this container will only display the amount of text that it needs to display up to some maximum value, right? So if it's, you know, shorter, there are less characters, it's not going to go ahead and display the maximum amount of value it needs, the maximum amount of width that it needs. And so that is accomplished by using this card right here. And I have this expansion set to flexible. And also this container right here that I have max width, right? So I have a max width of 300. And that is something that you need to set depending on what kind of apps you're going to be building, because 300 is fine in a mobile app, but if you're building like a desktop app, you will need to kind of tweak this value. And then I have this text over here that this is a, you know, a message here. This is message other. This is the message from the bot. This is my message here. We have this thing is actually, you know, has conditional visibility, right? If a role is user and or a role is assistant. So you're going to be getting access to this entire app as a member of our amazing Patreon community. And you can ask questions if you have any issues, if something is not working, and the community, as well as myself, will try to help you out. All right, guys. And so in closing, ChatGPT is awesome. It works really, really well. But lately, I've been feeling a little underwhelmed, and I've been super happy with this model because it works amazingly for coding, and it has some really nice features that ChatGPT does not have. And so definitely check it out, clone this app, take a look at this app when you join our amazing Patreon community. And remember, you're not only going to get access to this app, it's important to mention, you're going to get access to all my apps, as well as some of the future apps. And I have some amazing apps planned in the near future. I'm working on a complex app that should be released in the near future. That is an amazing app. And regardless, you're also going to get access to some extra content, our Q&As, our Patreon supported masterclass series, where we do in-depth tutorials covering different topics, different apps, different tools. And additionally, you're going to be part of an amazing community consisting of amazing people that are ready to help each other, ready to take their no-code game to the next level. And above all that, you're going to be supporting this channel, supporting my work. And remember, you guys are the reason that I'm creating these videos, to help you guys, to hopefully help you guys, you know, learn more about no-code, surpass any of the roadblocks, any of the barriers, and build the very best apps that you can build. And so if any of this sounds like it's going to provide you with some level of value, then I definitely recommend that you guys check out our amazing Patreon community and hopefully become a member. And you can do just that via the first link in the description below the video.